I'm really, really pleased to be joined by Aziz Abu Sarah and Maoz Inon. They are the co-CEOs of Interact International, and they are the co-author of a book that I hope you will already have heard of because it's been rightfully getting a lot of attention, called The Future is Peace. So they're both people whose work and careers I've followed with tremendous admiration over the years. Maoz and Aziz, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Peter.
There was a video that came out recently by a Palestinian American author named Suzanne Abul Hawa. It was responding to a critique of hers by Mahmoud Mamdani. And I don't agree with Suzanne Abul Hawa about certain things, but she made a point that really made me think. And she basically said, listen, when people have experienced the kind of thing that we have experienced and then feel hatred towards the people who have done this to us, we should not be judged for that hatred. And that hatred is something completely different than the kind of racism that you see from the powerful against the oppressed. And I thought, Jews, in a way, instinctively understand this in a way, because, many of us would have grown up with older people who hated Ukrainians or Lithuanians and Poles. And I wouldn't say that's a good feeling to build a political project on. But if I'm dealing with an elderly Jewish person who grew up in that place and went through what they went through, I would not be inclined to judge them too harshly, right? And so I'm curious how you think about the right way for us to think about Palestinians who may feel hatred towards Israel and Israelis given what they've experienced.
Yeah, I totally understand what Susanna Balhawa is saying because I grew up with that. I grew up with that anger and with that hate, and it's a human emotion. If somebody hurts you, most people are not going to be Gandhi and not going to be Jesus and not going to be MLK, and they're not going to go and right away go and hug the other and say, I forgive. So I understand that emotion, and we have to recognize this is human emotions. We are not robots, we are humans. And so hate is sadly is one of those emotions that we have. But I think instead of judging and instead of saying we accept it, I think it's how do we work to transform it? So often when people ask me, are you angry? I say, yes, I am angry. If somebody kills your parents, if somebody kills your brother, if somebody destroy your country, if somebody comes into your neighborhood and just goes and rampages in it, you are angry. It's a question of how we use that anger. And do we use it to generate, it's kind of like nuclear power. Do you use it to create bombs out of it, or do you use it to create light out of it? And so when I talk to Palestinians who tell me the same thing Suzanne has mentioned, and I hear many Palestinians or people who I meet on a daily basis in the street saying that, how could you? Aren't you angry? Aren't you hateful to people who did this to us? This is what I tell them. Use that energy for something that can transform and build a political movement for us, because that's the only way. I would also add, it's really hard to live with that hate. It's really hard to live with that bitterness. And as somebody who had it for at least the 8 years after Taysir died, it just makes you empty from the inside. It eats you alive. It was so difficult to exist with it. And I had to let go of it, not because the person who killed Taysir deserved it, but because I made that choice. And I felt so often that I was being a slave to the person who killed my brother. I felt by every time I was reacting in that way, I wasn't making my own choices. I was reacting to their choices. I was being controlled by them. And by choosing to let go of some of those feelings, I actually felt I took my own destiny and my own agency, and that I liberated myself from them. I don't make decisions based on what they've done to me. I make decisions based on what I want to be the future and what I want to do.
And Mose, a version of that, I don't know if in all of your travels with Aziz, you have had the opportunity to speak to anybody who's actually in Hamas. But I'm very curious if you were to have the opportunity to speak to people who were members of Hamas and who might have even been involved in those attacks that happened on October 7th, what you would want to say to them.
So thanks for the question. I will answer it, of course, completely. And I was asked the same question in a very popular podcast in Israel. by Shlomi Eldar. He's a well-known, prestigious Israeli journalist. And I repeat the same answer. I would be willing to meet the one who killed my parents. I will be willing, and I wish I could do it today, to meet the one who killed my parents. Because I think the only way, and for me, is a monster. Killing my parents, my father was 78, my mom was 77, choosing to kill civilians, those who make those decisions, and it doesn't matter his ethnicity, his nationality, or which organization or uniform you wear. To do that, I think you need to be a monster. And through Aziz teaching and the transformation and the meeting and people we met, both of us in the last 2.5 years, I believe that the only way to kill a monster is by looking to her in the eye and start listening to her pain, to her trauma, to her hate, to her feeling, and acknowledging them, recognizing them, humanizing those feelings. That's the only way to overcome the situation and the broken reality we are all living with. And by doing so, and Aziz and I just wrote an open letter to the son of the former supreme leader in Tehran, in Iran. And I would also be willing to go to Tehran tomorrow to meet the people in power in Tehran and in Hezbollah and Hamas and everywhere. We will be willing to dialogue and to speak to anyone, everyone that is willing to speak with us. We think that's the only way forward, because revenge, a vengeance, and more bombs and war will only escalate the situation. It's creating the second generation, the third, the fourth now, the fifth of traumatized people that living through multi-generation wars and trauma. And the only way to move forward is by humanizing each other, by investing, and this is the policy change we are calling that need to be taken. If it's in the US, if it's from Europe and from all the international community, we must start investing in reconciliation. We must start investing in shared future, because if we'll keep investing in greater walls, bigger bombs, it's not going to get better. It's only will get worse. So if anyone, again, have the connection to anyone in Hamas, if it's to go to Qatar, to go to anywhere that I can go, I will go tomorrow.
We have a meeting tomorrow. You can.
Okay, the day after. But for that, I will cancel all my meetings and will go and do it. That's the most important thing to do.
Aziz, I don't know if you've been asked the question about if you were to meet with the Israeli soldiers who tortured your brother, how you would think about that encounter.
Yeah, I think we both fully in agreement on that. I actually tried to contact some people to see if there is a way I could find the soldiers who tortured Taysir. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to. So I even took some steps to do that, and I wasn't able to. And I would be more than willing to do that meeting. Like Mao said, we wrote that letter to Khamenei together. It's, I think peace happens. People who sign peace agreements are not saints. They usually are war criminals. And this was true in Colombia. This was true in Northern Ireland. This was true in many places in the world. Often it's the worst of us that end up being the ones who sign a peace agreement. And they didn't always even fall in love with each other. I mean, David Trimble and Jerry Adams did not even shake hands in the White House. Begin and Sadat were not peace doves. To Palestinians, at least, Begin is one of the biggest terrorists in history. And I'm sure for Israelis, Sadat was not somebody loved after 1973 war. So I don't believe there's a way we can reach a sustainable peace that does not include some of those parties, including Hamas, including Likud, including, people we will not like. They're going to have to be in the room. And that's why, when President Trump announced his peace board, and I looked at them like, okay, if you're not including the main stakeholders, this is not going to work. But in addition to the main stakeholders, and this is what the two of us are working on, peace activists, peacemakers need to be in the room. And people undermine the importance of that. I spent tons of time working in Northern Ireland, and I learned that one of the reasons, often not mentioned enough, that a peace agreement was reached in Northern Ireland is because the Peace Women Coalition were inside the negotiation room. There were peacemakers, there were women who are experts on this work, who were in the grassroots organizations, in the negotiation room, working. And every time this agreement in the negotiations, things will blow up, and it's almost like it's not going to work and people are going to walk away. It was these women who would go between the two sides and talk to them and bring them back to the room and bring them back to the table. Until today, that has never happened in Israel and Palestine. Peacemakers have been marginalized and ignored. And big reason why we wrote The Future is Peace is to talk about that, is to say, without us in the room, it is not going to work. Lawyers and generals and politicians are not known for being great diplomats. They're not known for being people who know how to work it through disagreement. We do. We don't always agree, but we work out our disagreements. And that's what we need from the future meetings that would bring Hamas and Fatah and Likud and Labor and whoever in Israel and in Palestine to be at that table.
This has been a free preview of my weekly conversation. If you'd like to hear the rest and support my work, please consider subscribing at peterbeinart.substack.com.